This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
GSMC Podcast Network. My name is Chris Blades, and before I get started here today, we're going to make sure I remind you guys, as always, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of when we drop our latest stuff. If you could also please give us a 5-star rating, write a nice review. It'd be very helpful. It's very appreciated. But obviously, what you guys like, what you guys dislike, things we can improve on, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're on social media, we're on social media, so you can find us there, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We can talk, we can chat, we can debate, we can discuss. And it seems like the discussion is finally, at least in the United States, gaining traction towards having sports return. And I guess the sports, I mean, it's kind of wild because you always kind of figured it would end up being the NBA that returned first, just because they were the league that stopped first, so it would make the most sense. But it seems like them, the MLB, are trying to see who could get their sports league started up first, because both of them seem to be moving and taking steps towards that happening sooner rather than later. So we'll talk about the MLB in the next segment, because obviously they had their owners put in their proposal, and they had some discussions today on that. But yes, so we'll start with the NBA. And in the NBA, or I guess with the NBA, participants, this is all from ESPN though, obviously you can find this news really anywhere. I think Shane was the first person to really bring this to light, at least on the Twitter timeline. Participants on a board of governors, I take that back, Chris Haynes, I believe, from Yahoo Sports was the first one to mention that a bunch of profile athletes were getting on a call with some of the higher ups to kind of discuss like the parameters after obviously the call Friday. But participants on a board of governors call on Tuesday with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver left the virtual meeting feeling increasingly positive about the momentum toward a resumption of play this season, sources told ESPN. Owners and executives on the call, so this is separate from that players call. Owners and executives on the call were encouraged about the league's progress toward minimizing health risk upon a return, and the league office's positive conversation with the NBA Players Association, the National Basketball Players Association, about the players' desire to eventually restart this league, eventually start the season. The discussion centered on health and safety concerns, which is at this point definitely most important, including the goal of getting team officials and players comfortable with the idea that a positive test for the coronavirus upon return would not shutter play. We'll get to that in a second if that even makes any sense. Silver told those on the call that if a positive test would shut us down, we probably wouldn't go down this path. Interesting. The questions remain: how many positive tests would be too many? That is among the questions the NBA, the MBPA, and medical experts have come to terms with in the coming weeks before the league and union can greenlight a resumption of play. Once the NBA finalizes or formalizes a return to play, the league indicated to teams that the plan would be to standardize coronavirus testing among 30 teams. Sources said for now the NBA is allowing teams to use a variety of tests. As for the format of return to play, there is still no decision on what kind of form that would take with the 30 teams. The league hasn't worked through the details on whether all 30 teams would return or whether regular season games would be played, or if perhaps there would be a play-in tournament to give more teams a chance to make the 16-team playoff field. For sources said when asked about the bubble city isolation plan, Silver described it as a campus environment. I don't know about that. He has talked about 1 or 2 locations for players, and the focus being in either Orlando or Las Vegas, as we mentioned in the last episode. The NBA shared with the owners several factors that it plans to study over the next 2 to 4 weeks before deciding on the restart. Among them, sources say understanding the trajectory of new cases in those states starting to reopen, understanding who is getting severely ill and why, and developments on testing types. The NBA also studying how other leagues are handling the positive tests among participants. On the call, the league office wasn't optimistic about rapid response testing becoming widely available within the next month, which is kind of important. There was a growing confidence, I should say, among owners on the call about how players were responding to return to practice facilities. They believe 22 of the 30 facilities should be open by, I guess, next Monday. It was said in the league office described. It basically talked about how they're going to be monitoring other leagues that are starting to open up. I know a German soccer league is trying to start back up, see how if the Premier League or La Liga or Chinese Basketball Association, how they would start up. So yeah, so that was from the Board of Governors call, which, like I said, it's some interesting notes in there. So probably the biggest one was the fact that obviously they're gaining momentum towards playing, which my biggest gripe with the NBA during this whole thing has always been, I don't know if I necessarily specified this or said this on the podcast, but my biggest issue has always been that they've kind of been a little wishy-washy on this. And what I mean by that is, if you look at the NFL, not to say that they're doing this right or wrong, but they have always been on the side of, we're going to play until we're not going to play, basically. Like the way they've structured the way they didn't cancel anything, the way events have gone on as they at the time they were supposed to, on the date that they were supposed to, had nothing's really. I mean, obviously you can't have like the mini camps and stuff because like states won't allow that, but everything else is going like according to plan, more or less. And that's always because, like I said, they are always been adamant that we're going to try to play the season. Whether or not that works out is a completely separate point, and may very well be irrelevant. But like I said, they're at least been on the side of they're going to try to play. The NBA, on the other hand, like obviously they stopped the season and then they've kind of just been like pushing it down the line in terms of like making a decision on. Like even now, and with after this comes out, they still said they're going to probably give it like 2 to 4 more weeks before they make a formal decision on what they want to do. And while I understand like you want to know as much as you can to make an informed decision, like at some point, and hopefully they do this soon, they're going to have to pick a side. Either you're going to try to play, which it sounds like they're going to do, and just say that outwardly, that we're going to try to play, we're going to like wait out a little bit, but like they've always been like, we want to play, but then we want to make sure it's safe, and then we want to do this, and we might make sure everyone's happy, and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, at the end of the day, until there's a vaccine, and even with that, obviously some people won't take and don't believe in vaccines, and in fairness, I understand maybe not taking the first round of vaccine just to make sure it works, because if it doesn't, then what's the point? But just with that, like, until there's a working vaccine, it's not going to be safe. For players, obviously, they're playing this thing with no fans, which already tells you that it's not 100% safe, because, again, if they're worried about fans passing it to each other, that means the players can pass it to each other. They're on the court together in close and confined spaces. There's only one ball. All of them have to touch it. If one player is sick, there's a chance that you can now get 12 to 15 guys on each team, plus the coaches, plus the refs, plus anybody else as to work the games and stuff. That's upwards of 30 plus people potentially that could get sick for one person. Again, not necessarily what's going to happen, but what could happen, and this is what they're going to have to discuss. But yeah, so I'm saying because of that, it's not going to be safe, and you have to understand that. So if, like I said, it sounds like they want to play both sides of the fence. They want to make sure it's safe, but they also want to play. And I'm like, if you're playing, you understand that it's not safe, 100%. Like I'm not going to say that there aren't things you can do to make it safer, but there, like I said, with no vaccine, there's no way to be 100% safe. It's just not possible. Like I said, it's still, no matter whether they play the season or not, it's still going to be here, it's still going to be around. There's always talk about the second wave. We're seeing that over in China and potentially in like South Korea, some other places where they're starting to get that second wave. And like you could argue, we haven't even finished the first wave here in the United States, so who knows when the second wave starts up. But But yes, they're starting to catch that. So, like I said, it seems like there's going to be another wave of this virus, and because of that, as I said, I mean, the NBA is not immune. They're going to be people that potentially catch it. But yes, like I said, I want them to be on one side or the other. Like I said, it sounds like they're leaning more towards the playing side, which kind of what I always figured. And as Dudley pointed out, because there was also the report about they were sending out a text like yes or no poll kind of thing, which I thought was like kind of foolish, just because I'm like, generally speaking, I believe most of the teams that are in the playoffs or in the hunt are going to want to play. And like I said, that seems somewhat reasonable on my end. Most teams that are out of the playoffs, teams that like if you're like the Suns, if you're the Knicks, if you're the Hornets, like teams like that, the Hawks, like where you're really out of the playoffs and like there's no real benefit to you coming back other than like potentially getting the Rona. Like, why would you do it? So I'll say that poll is kind of useless. I'm like, that should not be a determining factor on if they decide to do this or not. It's just like, because obviously, again, most people are going to want to play. As Jared Dudley pointed out on Twitter, if they don't play, then obviously that has ramifications. Money financially. So they're already going to plan to lose money with like the protest stuff from Daryl Morey, or with the Hong Kong stuff, and then now with the missed games and stuff. So they're always going to try to play all the games just so they can get as much money as they can, just so the cap is not, there's not like a huge loss in revenue, and then obviously that affects everybody. That affects the owner, that affects the players, that affects, I guess maybe, I don't know, well, the coaches aren't under the salary cap, but it maybe affects the coaches, how much they can afford to be paid, stuff like that. It's going to affect everybody. So I understand why that was his point. But at the same time, the elephant in the room is going to be now, and it's going to be the same whenever they start this league up, and even until they finish it, is the whole, what do you do when a player tests positive? Or just like, I guess, or, yeah, basically just what you do, or if it's like, or if like a guy or guys don't feel like it's safe to come back. Because obviously if you're thinking of a guy like, I guess Karl Anthony Towns specifically, obviously he lost his mother due to this virus. Condolences to him and his family. But if you're him, like, I could see why he'd be like, nah, I'm good, it's not worth it. And I'm saying not to say that he's going to be the only one to do that, but what if there are other players that feel that way, even though overwhelming majority of them do? I guess LeBron and the big guys are going to be there, but what do you do about those people? That if there's like a couple guys, like, are they just like off the team? Do like teams get new roster spots for those people? Like, can they be cut? Can like how would that work? One, and then two, obviously, like I said, the big thing is going to be what happens when a player tests positive. Because obviously they've said, and they're going to say, which is foolish in my opinion, that they're going to keep on trucking. Which again sounds good now because it hasn't happened yet. But like, say, and obviously you don't wish this on anybody, but just give an example. Say, playoffs start, it's about to be the finals. LeBron tests positive. Or Giannis tests positive. Or Anthony Davis. Or Kawhi. Or who else is... those are probably the big guys. Or like Harden or Westbrook if they make it that far. Like, one of those guys tests positive. You're telling me that the league's just going to push on if LeBron's not in the finals? That's what you want me to believe. Because it sounds good, in theory, but I'm like, that doesn't seem that logical. And even if it's not him, say it's, like you said, say it's Jared Dudley that tests positive. Like, what do you do if the team that's playing against them is like, when we're not playing? Like, so say they advance, say they win their first round series, they advance, and it comes out afterwards, before the semifinals, that, a player on the Lakers tested positive. If I'm the opposing team, why would I want to play them? Why do I want to play any of them? Because, like, if you're in the real world, I mean, obviously, if you know somebody or you were in direct contact with someone that tests positive, you normally would be allowed to get the test. I'm not saying that's how it is everywhere, but that's generally the guideline is that if you have been in direct contact with someone that tests positive, then you can get tested. So obviously all these guys are going to get tested, and more regularly. And then even with that, like, are they getting tested every day? Are they getting tested once a week, twice a week? Like, how does that work? I mean, I would feel like it has to be every day because you need to be keeping up with this. But I'm saying, like, if the results don't come back that fast, and like, what's even the point? But yeah, like I'm saying, so if I'm the team that's playing them, I'm like, why would I want to play against a team that has a guy tested positive? Because again, even though he may be the only one that tested positive, that doesn't mean anyone else doesn't have the symptoms of it. And if that's the case, why would we want to play them? And it's the same thing with like a team. Like say they have like 4 or 5 guys test positive on a team. Then what do? You're gonna have the playoffs go around and have eight guys healthy for the playoffs, and just have a team be like, all right, good luck. That's what's gonna happen. Because again, in my opinion, I don't know if this is actually the 100% like the official like CDC or whoever you pay attention to get your health regulations, guidelines, but like if you were direct contact, you should self-quarantine just in case. So you tell me if someone on the team tests positive, they're just going to be like, all right, the rest of you guys, you're good, you haven't tested positive yet, just go about doing whatever. Like again, that sounds good in theory because it hasn't happened yet, but like in practice, that sounds really bad and can lead to towards a lot of negative things. I was going to have to flip-flop on these things, but you get the point. Like, could lead to a lot of bad things. Because then, even if these players are like asymptomatic, or that doesn't mean they can't pass it on to their older coaches, older executives. If I don't know how the family situation is going to work, you're allowed to have family at this thing. If they pass it on to their family, pass it along to like the hotel workers, arena people, whoever. Like I said, one person getting it, or I guess one person getting it, not even just like in the league, but it's on a couple different teams. Because then shockwaves through the whole playoffs. Then it's just like, again, obviously, and my opinion has always been that if you're going to play, you have to go about it and finish it out. But also, if you think there's a chance you're not going to be able to finish it out, there's no point in playing, in my opinion. Because again, it sounds good now to say like, oh yeah, we'll push on. But again, if it happens to the wrong person, or it happens to like a team and a bunch of guys get it, you can't possibly tell me you're just gonna go about playing the rest of the playoffs. Like you can't tell me that. Doesn't make any sense. Like what if it happens in the middle of a series? Like all right, I think I might have mentioned this on the last podcast, but you play a game, you find out after the game someone tested positive. Now you don't know who they infected or who else they might have infected. You gotta quarantine everybody. And now what? You shut down the playoffs for 2 weeks to wait for these two teams to get off the quarantine, or do you just like move on without them? It's just saying like there's too many variables, and obviously you can't assume that that's going to happen. We don't know, but if you're doing this, you have to plan for the worst possible outcomes, and that's obviously the worst possible outcome is like it's like this turns into like a little cluster, and it's like a big and just like half the league gets it. Like that would be like the worst case, but assuming that they keep it a little bit more contained, what happens if somebody catches it? And then, like I'm saying, like you can't just tell me they're going to be like, all right, just quarantine this one guy and move on. Like, who's to even say the player's going to go for that now? Because again, it's easy and good to say now. They're like, oh yeah, no, like we'll be fine. Just quarantine him, you'll be good. But then when it happens, and it's like, oh, we just played this team yesterday, and this guy tested positive, I might have it. Even if, like I said, it could take up to, I think it's like what, incubation take like 5 to 14 days, so it may take a while for me to even show symptoms or even test positive for it. Like you can't tell me it makes sense, or anyone would tell you that the right thing to do would be like, oh yeah, we don't know if any of you guys will test positive in a little while, but just like in the meantime, just go play a couple basketball games in close quarters where you're all touching the same thing. So like I said, if one person outside the person that tests positive has it, then they can infect everybody else. You understand? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So, I mean, the NBA and Adam Silver have done a lot of things right since he's taken over, but this is the first one where I'm starting to look, and I'm just like, and I'm not just going to say it for him. This is really for any league that tries to do this. I'm like, does this really make that much sense? Because again, it sounds easy to do in theory. It sounds good in theory to be like, oh, you're just going to quarantine the one guy. But in practice, it's a lot harder than you think, and it will be a lot more difficult when that time comes. Because it was easy to be like, oh, you're going to shut down the first time when somebody tests positive when Rudy Gobert tests positive before. But now with the owners and the TV networks and everybody and the players potentially breathing down their neck, or breathing down his neck, I should say, for Adam Silver, the decision becomes a lot more difficult, in my opinion. So we'll see how that goes, but it sounds like at least soon we will at least hear that they're going to come back. Obviously, they still have the 3 to 4 months that they probably got to get back trained and everything. So we're not at best we're seeing something in like July, but like early July. But like I said, it sounds like they will be back very soon. And alongside that, the MLB is also talking about their return to play. So we'll discuss the updates with them right after this break. So stay right there.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Again, this article is from ESPN, but a multi-hour meeting between Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association on Tuesday was the first step in addressing complex issues facing a restart for the sport, amid the coronavirus pandemic. Though discussion didn't involve any economic components, which is interesting because that seems like it'd be very important, just like how all the money is going to work on how much or how little players are going to get paid, depending on like the revenue for the season, and again, how many games and all that stuff. Seems like important, but I guess you want to get past the basic steps first. So, no judgment. But yeah, so the compensation was not discussed. Sources familiar with the meeting told ESPN. Items addressed included timing and logistics for second spring training, potential rule changes, roster sizes, transaction rules. A good bulk of the meeting was revolved around COVID-19 testing protocols, which makes sense, including contact tracing and response procedures in case of positive tests. Details for much of the health and safety concerns will be relayed to the association in the coming days. Also addressed were ballpark access procedures moving forward, as well as health and safety issues away from the ballpark. Once the health concerns are addressed, many around the sport believe the biggest hurdle will revolve around the economics at play. The Player Association believes that it is a settled debate, having agreed in late March to a prorated salary structure that would pay players for every game they play this season. The sides also agreed in March to discuss the economics of a season played without fans in the stands, which, I mean, there should be no fans. Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred has said that about 40% of the MLB revenue is tied to gates, including concessions, parking, ballpark advertising, luxury suites, and programs. Fearful of those financial losses, owners approved a plan Monday that would pay players a percentage of their 2020 salaries based on a 50-50 split between players and owners of MLB revenue from the regular season and postseason. Sources told ESPN that union views that concept as a salary cap, which it has said it will never agree to. However, none of that came up Tuesday. Negotiations between the sides could take up to 2 weeks as they work through the layers in order for baseball to start up this season. So, like I said, like the NBA, they're having discussions, which means that they're close to making a decision. Which, I mean, basically means they're close to trying to come back. Whether or not it works, we'll all see in the near future. But they're at least going to try, which, I mean, is not surprising. We kind of always, at least I always kind of always figured that the sports are going to try. Whether or not it works or not is whatever, but they're going to give it a shot. And like I said, just hope it does. But yeah, so obviously the testing protocols and what happened to positive test, it makes sense. Obviously things are a little bit different in baseball where, like, obviously you're a lot further away. Again, you all have to touch the same ball potentially, like in fielding wise, but again, they change balls so much that you might not touch, like if you're in the outfield, you might not touch the same ball as like a shortstop for like multiple innings, depending, because like every foul ball, every pitch in the dirt, everything. Like, again, they're changing balls out all the time, and I guess maybe they would even do that more often with this. But yeah, so it seems it's a lot less likely, or no, I guess it's a lot harder for it to spread, like, again, from player to player in the game, due to the fact that, again, you're not testing the same thing. Everyone has their own bat, everyone has their own helmet, their own batting gloves, their own glove, stuff like that, as opposed to, like I said, in basketball, where everyone has to touch the same exact thing, which is the basketball. That's, like, not at the same time, but like there is I guess maybe there's an extra one here or there, but they're not changing out balls every possession. So I'm saying, like I said, if you get one guy's germs on it, then everybody on the court's gonna get it. And then, like I said, if they touch anything on the side, then they're gonna give it to someone. Again, not that it's impossible for baseball for it to happen, but again, because the distance and the amount of times they change the ball, it's going to be more difficult, I would think. Other than, like, from pitcher to catcher, obviously that's going to be pretty simple. But yeah, so you got to worry about that. You got to worry about, like I said, testing, and or not testing, but like what happens when someone tests positive. Because just like in the NBA, like, what do you do? Are you just going to, like I said, saying you're going to quarantine people, or just like quarantine that one person, sounds great in theory until you have to do it. And teams are afraid to play teams that have multiple guys that have tested positive. And I mean, not everyone's going to be afraid, because some people they're going to understand the risk when you come back. But at the same time, like, if this is a very short-term decision, in my opinion, because, like, again, is money going to be down this year? Yes. If you don't play, is money going to be down next year? If you don't play, yes. Maybe even potentially the next 3, 4, 5 years potentially. But you know what you can bring back? Money. You know what you can't make back, or you can't bring back, is a life, or your health. So if you, like I said, if you get it, or even if you don't get it and it's not that serious for you, if you pass it along to somebody and it's serious for them, you can't take that back. Like, again, they can do things, and eventually they're gonna, once the vaccine and stuff are good, and maybe hopefully next year, who knows, maybe even beyond that, like, things will get back to normal money-wise. And again, I understand that no fans, there's a lot of money to be lost within the MLB and all sports, really. But if you have the sport, people are going to still watch it, so you're still going to get that TV revenue, which is obviously a big part of any sports. There's just the viewership from home, because not everybody can go to the games. So now you're going to make no money, you're just going to make less, and then again, adjusting for less over the future will make it more easy to deal with than obviously right now. It's going to be such a sudden drop that it's going to be like, whoa, what's going on? But again, if you prepare for this in the more short term thing, you understand that all right, this is probably what's going to happen for the next couple of years. Like I said, you can make the money back eventually. Things can even out or just calm down in a couple of years, and they'll start to the revenue will start to rise and rise again. But like I said, you can't health. I mean, again, if it's not that serious for you, and you get a mild strain of it, or like you recover from it, like all right, your health might be fine. But there's going to be people that either don't recover from it or are affected by it afterwards, potentially. Obviously, you never know. With viruses, you're always going to be 100% the same. Although, like I said, there's still so much information and misinformation out there. I don't know exactly how bad it is for everybody, but you hear different things about how it affects different people after they've recovered. And also just how likely you are to get it again if you already have it. So, like I said, it might not affect you specifically, but it could affect a teammate, it could affect a parent, it could affect a friend, it could affect a child, it could... And like I said, everyone's like saying like, oh, like if you're young, you don't have underlying conditions, like you'll be fine. And I'm like, sure, but like also like younger people and seemingly healthy people are perishing. Maybe not at the higher rate, but again, I guess you just plan on avoiding your parents for the next 6 months, or avoiding your grandparents, or avoiding aunts or uncles, or anyone that's over the age of like 50 or 60. Then, I mean, if you just don't care about them, hey, more power to you. But I know a lot of people that do care about those people, and I don't think risking their health is worth it. Just so, like I said, you make a little bit more money in the short term. But again, money runs this country, so I understand why. And that's also kind of goes into the second point, which is the whole idea of like this faux salary cap that would be now in sports. Now in baseball, like it's already in other sports. But if I'm the players, I would not agree to this if I'm them, because obviously if you're taking a percentage of the 50-50 split and like splitting it up against the guys. So like I said, it's kind of like how it is in basketball, where like a max player can only own up to this much percentage of the salary cap for the team. So like even like the money can fluctuate up and down depending on the salary cap. So obviously, if they may lose money next year, then the guys that are getting paid max deals are going to get paid a lot less because they can only get a certain percent of whatever the salary cap is, and then obviously it trickles down from there. So everyone will be making less money, but you'll still take up the same amount of the salary cap. For baseball, that's not how it's run. You just get paid whatever. Basically, it seems like, and all your contracts are fully guaranteed and all that stuff. Same thing kind of works in football. You're kind of like slotted per se, and then also like their money's not fully guaranteed. It's all like so. Then like I said, half the money not half but like the bunch of the money in the contract is like fake money anyway. It's all like incentive based or like whatever, or can be like moved around or shuffled however they please, or can be taken off the salary cap and added into like a bonus or something. It's all like kind of funny. But I said it's worth with the salary cap that makes sense to have a percentage based on the revenue split of whatever you get. But in baseball, since that's not a thing, now you're kind of messing with the players. And again, as a person that's always on the side of the players more so than the owners, because again, at the end of the day, the owners, one, they have less people to split the pie up amongst, because, like I said, there's only 30 owners. There's how many of our players? Hundreds of players. So the splitting of the pie works a little bit differently for them than it does for the teams. And also, most of these guys are like already very, very rich. Not that some baseball players aren't very, very wealthy as well. But these guys are all million, potentially billionaires before they even buy the MLB team, or before they even own the MLB team. And some of them even inherit it from their families. Like, it just kind of stays in the family. Like, that doesn't happen. And, like, just because your dad was an MLB player does not mean that you automatically just get to take his place. Like, again, you may get more opportunities offered to you because your dad was an MLB player, but it's not like where you can literally inherit the family business from your dad. If your dad was the owner of the team, or like an uncle or somebody was the owner of the team, you can literally just get it passed down to you, and you again always had money from the beginning. And then, like I said, you don't have to spend any of your own money to get the team. You just like have it. That's what I'm saying. Like, for the owner's standpoint, it's like they're not even they can afford a loss. Now, again, rich people want to stay rich, so I understand why they don't want to take a loss, but they can afford a loss more so than some players can. Like, none of them. I mean, maybe I'm not going to say none of them living like paycheck to paycheck per se. Like, obviously they have debts and things that they're paying for, things that they like to afford, they may not be able to afford these owners. But, like, again, they're not, as long as they invested it right, they're not going to be, or utilize the money, but they're not going to be, like, short on their rent or going to have to struggle to pay their mortgage and stuff like that. They shouldn't, at least, with the money that they're bringing. Even if, like I said, even if it's less money, it's still millions of dollars, which should be enough to cover most of your expenses, I would think. Again, I've never seen that much money, and I don't know what that money, how much, what having even that much money would be like, even if it's less than what the owners are used to. Like I said, I'm going to side with the players in that aspect because, again, now you're screwing with their contracts because the contracts were negotiated, and the CBA was negotiated under a no salary cap type of thing. Now you're creating a salary cap, and now you're adjusting the way that they're, not only the way that they're paid, but also like what they're paid and how they're going to be paid. Just because, again, if it's, as opposed to just getting paid whatever the contract is that they're getting, and which, I mean, again, I get that you can't pay that because they're going to be making less money. But again, that's not, as a player, that's not my job to figure out how you're going to pay everybody. You offer up the contract, you sign the contract, and then, like, you just, you pay me what I'm supposed to be paid until, like, I'm not on the team anymore. And even when I'm not on the team, you still potentially pay me. And, like, you see, like, again, everyone's always like, oh, the players should honor their contract, even when, this is a little bit off of the coronavirus thing, but, like, even when, like, oh, guys are, like, and it happens in the NFL all the time, like, you're 2 or 3 years into your deal, and the guys want raises or whatever. Like a pay raise because, like, they've outperformed their contract. And they're always like, oh, the bunch of fans are always like, oh, you should honor your contract, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, I get that, but, like, how many owners cut guys 2-3 years into their deals? As soon as the guaranteed money runs out. They're like, you're not as good as we thought you were, cut. Or maybe even, not even just like, you're not as good. Just like, hey, we need to save some money, cut. Happens all the time. But now when a player is outperforming their contract, it's always like, oh, but, like, you signed it, like, you should honor. Like, I'm like, all right, but, like, if you were in your field of work and you signed a contract, cool. But now you're at the top of your field, and yet everyone around you is getting paid, got a salary increase, but your salary stays the same. Would you not also want to raise on your? I understand you signed your contract, whatever, but everyone, any normal person would be like, hey, like, they would try to work themselves out a raise because, again, you've done the work to warrant getting paid more, especially getting paid better than your peers because, as you've shown, whether, like, whatever field you're in, you're superior to them. So why just because you signed a contract 3 years ago that is now not necessarily relevant based on what the money in that field or in that company is, why should I just be forced to stick to that? Because, again, most people wouldn't do that. They'd be like, I'll be like, oh, okay, they would at least try to negotiate. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Same thing happens with players, but, like, I'm saying the same thing with the MLB guys here. It's just like, why would I just do this to appease the owners? Because at the end of the day, these sports only exist with the players. And people are always on, the fans are always like, oh, well, we pay your salary, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sort of, but, like, a lot of their money comes from them being good. Obviously, because, again, if they weren't good or the product was considered inferior, you wouldn't watch, because that's, I mean, the same argument you can make with, like, why women's sports get paid less, because it's viewed as an inferior product, even though they're the best at the best in the world at what they do. They're elite level players, but they're paid less. Why? Because the viewership isn't the same as the male sports because it's deemed inferior. So, like I said, if you have a product that is assumed inferior, the fans won't watch it. So I'm saying, even if you believe that fans are the ones that pay the salaries, if you're not going to watch, you're not going to pay for the tickets if the team's bad. Happens all the time. I mean, other than, like, outside of, like, New York or whatever, where they're just diehard good or bad. But most other places, like, when the team's bad, the ticket sales are down, stuff like that's down. But when they're good, not everyone wants to go to the game. When the product's bad on the field, or on the court, or on the wherever, people aren't paying. But then when it's good again, people are paying, and that's why, again, the TV revenue is a lot of really what makes it, because even when the team's bad, I might not pay for you, may have to pay to go to the stadium and pay these absorbent prices for parking and food and concessions and stuff, but I'll watch it on TV, because I have a TV, I have cable, or I have some sort of setup where I can watch the games live, whether it's, like, League Pass or, like, whatever. So I always thought that was weird. Or fans like, oh, we're paying your salary, and I'm like, I'm like, not really, no. And again, you're paying for these tickets or paying for cable service or whatever to watch these sports because the players are really good. If they weren't good, you wouldn't be paying. And to think that like, oh, we can just find any, like, no. Obviously, there's the guys that would like the chance to play, but there's a reason why they're not at the professional level for whatever reason. I don't know. It could be a multitude of things. But there's a reason why they're not there, and because of that, like I said, you can't just find anybody. Even in like again, and somebody was talking about like, oh, we can just take the guys from AA and AAA and put them in. Like these guys are in AA and AAA for a reason, because they aren't good enough to be MLB players yet. If they were, they have been in the MLB. And so just taking guys from AA and AAA and putting them in the majors and try to pass it off as Major League Baseball does not work. That's why when they try replacement players or whatever, whenever there's like strikes or whatever, it doesn't last that long because you can't replace the moneymaker. And at the end of the day, the players are the moneymakers. So from the player standpoint, I completely would be on their side. They're like, we're not going with this faux salary cap thing. It just doesn't. For them, this is not what they agreed to. This is not what they have to do. They can get the season started up with, again, just taking less money, which they agreed to, but just not doing it in the way that appeases the owners, and everyone can get what they want. But, yeah, so a lot of interesting discussions had over the last couple of days, a lot of interesting discussions to be had in the coming weeks, and maybe even months as sports, again, the talk of sports coming back starts to ramp up, and then eventually the return of sports happens. So we'll discuss any of those new details as they continue to come out. But after this next break, we're going to come back and we're going to discuss, obviously with the NFL offseason, the draft and everything kind of more or less over. Obviously, there's still some big names out there, Jadeveon Clowney, Cam Newton, as an example, just of guys that could potentially still sign. There are teams or players that you could feel like coming out of the offseason are winners or losers. So we'll discuss both sides of that. We'll discuss the winners first, but we'll discuss both sides of that coming up after these breaks. So stay right there.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
we are back here again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcasting. So, like I said, we're going to start with the winners. No real, order per se, or a top 5 or whatever, but just, going some overall winners, in my opinion. So, I was going to do these guys a little bit separately, but you can kind of all group them together, if you will. And it's a lot of the young, well, not a lot, because it's not all of them, but some of the young quarterbacks. So whether that's guys like Drew Lock, Gardner Minshew, Jarrett Stidham. We'll start with Stidham. Obviously, for him, he's a winner because they seem to be handing the keys to him. Again, we'll see how that goes with I guess with no real offseason to kind of adjust and get used to the playbook and get chemistry down with all the receivers and stuff, see how that goes. And also, again, Brian Hoyer is at least a person that started games in the league if they don't think Stidham's ready. But they didn't draft a quarterback. They didn't acquire Nick Foles or Andy Dalton or anybody via trade or I guess in free agency when Dalton got cut. They didn't sign Cam Newton. So at least in theory, it seems like they're moving ahead with Stidham as the guy. Which again is, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, but hey, good for him. They brought back Joe Thuney on the franchise tag. David Andrews coming back from the situation that he had last year. So the line should be a little bit better. They drafted 2 tight ends, obviously, to replace, or try to replace, not to say it's going to be easy, but try to replace Gronk. Next year, they didn't really do much at the receiver from what I remember. At the same time, you still have a good head coach, you still have a good defense. Most of that's, obviously they lost some guys like Van Noy and Jamie Collins that they have to try to figure out how to replace. But that's basically what the Patriots have done. Most of my sports fandom, or my time watching the NFL, is that they've let go of guys a year early, and then they just find guys to replace them. And if they don't find a guy to replace them, they just bring the guy back in a couple of years when he usually fizzles out. Because outside Chandler Jones, most of the guys that move on from the Patriots don't have that same level of success as they did when they were on the Patriots. But they get paid. So, you got to take the good with the bad. And then they won a Super Bowls, too. Most of them, at least. So, like I said, could be worse for Jarrett Stidham. Again, like I said, Gardner Minshew is another one. They traded Nick Foles. So, it's the Gardner Minshew show down in Jacksonville. Which, it kind of was last year just because he kind of captured the fan base by playing good for a rookie. Because, again, their record wasn't that great with him as a starter. But, again, as a 6th round pick, a guy very many people really knew about. He played very well for himself. Was in rookie of the year contention. And also the last, as noted on ESPN, the last 6th rounder to throw at least 400 passes over his first 2 seasons was Tom Brady, who threw 3 as a rookie and 413 as leading to the Patriots to the Super Bowl in 2001. Minshew's already way ahead of the game. Obviously, haven't started a lot of games as a 6th rounder his rookie season. And also, same with him, they didn't bring in anybody to kind of compete with him per se. The guys on the roster with him were Josh Dobbs and 6th round pick Jake Luton, or guys backing him up. So he should at least have this season to prove he's an NFL starter. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least he's getting his shot. Also, they brought in Tyler Eifert, which is whatever because he's always hurt. But if he's not hurt, good tight end. Drafted Laviska Shenault. They're talking about trading Fournette, but it hasn't happened yet. Same thing with Ngakoue. Those 2 things haven't happened yet. So until they happen, they're still on the team. Which helps Gardner Minshew. So, like I said, he's the winner. And then, obviously, we talked about this after the draft. The biggest winner of the offseason from a young quarterback perspective is definitely Drew Lock. Because he played really well towards the end of last season. Though the defense he played weren't that great towards the end of the season. But again, 4-1 in 5 starts as a rookie. Not bad, especially when he wasn't even able to practice for half the year because he had the broken wrist and was on IR, if I remember correctly. But he did enough to at least have them feel confident about him, and then we'll see what happens from there. I know Denver was talking about trying to bring in Tom Brady. Didn't work out. But, like I said, same thing with him. The quarterbacks behind him are Jeff Driscoll, Brett Rippon, and Riley Neal. So it's clearly Drew Lock's team until he gives them a reason not for it not to be his team. And like I said, based on last year, they don't have that reason yet. We'll see how this year goes, but they're supporting him by, again, not bringing, a vet or trying to give somebody that you could think
keep competing with him. They're going to be like, nope, this is your team. We're going to have these also young guys behind you. I mean, Jeff Crystal's not that young, but these other guys behind you that aren't really going to compete for your spot, which is, again, alleviate pressure from the youngster, because, again, you don't want that fear of somebody breathing down your neck, and you always have to perform, or else something could happen to your spot. And then also, again, on the offensive side of the football, they had Phillip Lindsay. They brought in Melvin Gordon, which, I mean, we'll see how that works out. But, again, he's a good player at the very least, though. I mean, obviously the Chargers didn't really miss a beat when he was out, but he could be useful, you would think. Cortland Sutton was obviously great. Noah Fant was good for a rookie. And then they brought in Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler in the draft. So, I mean, there's worth things to do. They also brought in Albert O from Mizzou, his team's former teammate. Like I said, get another guy that could be familiar with, especially in the season where you're not going to have a legitimate offseason. It helps to be around guys that you know. They made a major addition in the interior offensive line, signing Graham Glass now. It's a big deal. Hopefully show up the interior. The added experienced offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur, who may not be a good head coach, but he got a good player, Daniel Jones, last year, who many people thought was going to be a terrible pick. Turned out to be, maybe it's not that bad. Got good years out of Case Keenum, got Case Keenum's best year. Got good play from Sam Bradford when he was with the Vikings as well. So again, maybe just not built out for a head coach, but he may very well be a good offensive coordinator, and that could work well with him. Obviously, again, having experience with a young quarterback last year, Daniel Jones, kind of, it's not like he's only been around vets, like he's been around young guys too, so that helps. And again, their line isn't perfect, but we'll see. It should at least be a little bit better than the weapons on the outside are good, so that helps them out quite a bit. Another winner would definitely be, in my opinion, Nick Chubb. Just because, again, I mean, it was always kind of his team per se, but they went out, got him, even because the biggest problem with the Browns, you could argue, last year was their offensive line. Went out, signed Jack Conklin. Went out, drafted Jedrick Wills. Went outside Jedrick Wills, got Austin Hooper, a tight end. Not that the tight end position was their biggest worry, but again, have three guys that could potentially block for him and help open those holes, even though he still had a great season last year. So if he has an even improved blocking, he could be even better. And then obviously you don't have to deal with Freddie Kitchens anymore. See how that works with Stefanski now over there. But again, a lot of people were talking about Freddie Kitchens' play calls being a little iffy. Don't got to worry about that anymore. Got a different mind, a different attitude, different philosophy in the building. See how that works out. And like I said, I mean, Stefanski ran the Vikings offense, and Dalvin Cook, though his issue was not talent, it was mainly health, looked great last season. And like I said, if he can get even better production out of Nick Chubb, that's a blessing. So, like I said, he's another guy that lucked out. You could argue in the running back position as well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a guy that lucked out. Like I said, we talked about that pick when it happened. I really did enjoy that. I really did like that pick personally. But just because he kind of is just like a perfect fit for him. He doesn't have to do that much. You're on a team and you're on an offense that just won a Super Bowl. You have Patrick Mahomes, whom basically anybody will say at this point is the best quarterback in the league. I really don't know who else you can argue with, in my opinion. But teach his own. We'll talk about some foolish debates in a couple of segments. But yes, you come there. You have great weapons in Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins on the outside to kind of, like, again, keep defenses honest, and then that opens up holes for you as a running back. And then, obviously, he was great out of the backfield, great at missing tackles, and even though it's probably going to split time with Damian Williams, it's going to be his team in the very near future. And like we said, we saw kind of what happened, well, not like I said, but like we saw what happened in 2017 where they had Spencer Ware, then they drafted Kareem Hunt, and you saw Kareem Hunt take off once Ware went down with a knee injury. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to happen to Damian Williams, but I'm saying if he gets a chance to be the guy, though he's a little bit smaller, could work out for him. I mean, obviously, he talked about it could potentially be their GM, I believe, said that he thought Edwards-Helaire was better than Brian Westbrook. Or I'll take that back. Andy Reid told the GM that he thought Edwards-Helaire was better than Brian Westbrook, which is high praise. So he was obviously great for Andy in his time in Philly. And apparently the only running back that Reid had drafted before the third round in his career was LaShawn McCoy. And they obviously drafted Edwards-Helaire at the end of the first round, so they had a high praise for him and thought he was going to be really good and good addition to the team. And we'll find out soon enough if that is true, but I thought that was he's definitely a big winner. Going to such a creative coach and creative offense where you don't have to worry about being the guy that first you just kind of fit in and do your part. And like I said, it's not going to be a lot of pressure on them. Same thing with LSU, really. Just like, since they had such great quarterback play and such great weapons on the outside, people always had to respect the pass, and that opened up things for him, running the ball and also catching the ball out of the backfield. So that helps. Then arguably the biggest winner of the offseason has to be the Bucks or Bucks GM. What's his name? Jason Licht? Not 100% sure. But regardless, the Bucks GM, biggest winner. I mean, when you have the greatest quarterback of all time, in my opinion, Tom Brady, fall into your lap. I mean, he didn't even really have to do that much work. Obviously, they have to convince him. But, I mean, there's no way that not even at this time last year, because obviously there's no chance. Even like halfway through the season, even with the talks like Brady potentially leaving, even started the playoffs, I don't know if the Bucks thought like, oh, he's 100% going to be our guy. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't pursuing him, but I mean, no one 100% thought Brady was going to lead the Patriots. Like, everybody was at least a little bit surprised. I didn't say you were completely shocked, because I wasn't completely shocked by the end, but you were at least a little bit surprised. You're like, wow, there's like no way. And then also at the same time to come to the Bucks, who I don't say the Bucks were bad or anything, but just like that's just like it's not like it's he didn't go to the Niners, he didn't go to like the Colts or like somewhere like that. You know, he didn't go to LA. Like he went to Tampa, which is not necessarily the guy that gets the cream of the crop, I should say, free agent. Not the biggest destination, though. I mean, obviously, they have the no state tax, so there's that. But like, it's not Miami. It's not like Tampa's like. I have my family, or my grandparents had a condo down there, so I'm down there a lot. It's a nice place, but like, it's again not necessarily people aren't like, oh my god, when Tampa's a big free agent, like when it has money, they're not everyone's not flocking to Tampa. But they got him, and then subsequently got Gronk. So again, all the GM for the Bucks and the Bucks really have to do is just not screw it up. Just like come to the meeting and be prepared. Don't have like the wrong name on the slide. I feel like that happened with Steph Curry at like one of his shoe deals. I think maybe it was Nike or somebody had like the wrong name up or something like that. I feel like there was a story with that and like why he ended up with at Under Armour, and obviously see that worked out for them. And that's all you have to do is just like not have the wrong name up, not have a terrible pitch, not like insult him in any type of way, and like it seemed like you were good because he seemed like he was very ready to go there and obviously play for Bruce Arians. Having Bruce Arians definitely helps your case. So they got that. Then I'm saying that they got Gronk, and then also just speaking of falling into their laps, Tristan Wirfs, who many people's probably a stretch, but people believe was the best tackle in this draft, fell to them at 13. I mean, they had to trade up one spot, but just to be safe. But again, he was not supposed to be there that late. And he was. So I'm saying, even then, like I said, they luck into, you could argue, Tyler Johnson, Minnesota receiver, in the later rounds, who, again, obviously he's not like the biggest guy, the fastest guy, but, I mean, he got open a lot and he caught the ball a lot in Minnesota. And now he's going to be catching the ball from Tom Brady. And he won't have to be the main guy. He's going to be, like, at best, the third, fourth option on most plays. I mean, when you're facing the third or fourth best option on the defense, it can be easier to exploit. So, like I said, they lucked into some of that stuff there. So, like I said, the big winner, and it was kind of like I said, a bunch of big winners, a lot of young quarterbacks, Nick Chubb, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then obviously the Bucks as an organization are a big one just because of the success that they had. Because I mean, again, Bucks aren't the team that normally gets the big guy, and they got the big fish. So shout out to them. But after this break, we're going to come back here and got to talk about the flip side. So we got to talk about some of the big losers, if you will. Obviously, it's hard to say for certain because there's no games played, but it's like projecting just guys that like
you could say that had a rough offseason, whether personally, as a player, or as a team, or organization, or whatever. So we'll discuss all of that right after this break. Stay right there.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
We are back here again with the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by GSMC Podcast Network. So, in my opinion, the biggest losers in this offseason have to be rookies. Whether that's rookie players, rookie head coaches, whoever. They're the biggest losers just because, again, this is the first time ever, I guess, because, I don't know how much maybe football was around I think college football at least was around during the Spanish flu, but I don't know how much the NFL or whatever it might have been called back then was around. So they didn't really deal with this, but they're the first rookie class ever to go through something like this, where you have no off season. You have an off season program, but not on the field, so you don't get to build that chemistry, you don't get to interact with your teammates. Any teammate they're meeting on FaceTime. Or Skype or Zoom or something. They're not seeing them face to face. They're not interacting with them. They're not talking with them. They're not hanging out, doing any of that kind of stuff. Obviously, you can build chemistry over the phone. People have long distance relationships for years before they even meet, so it's not impossible to build that some level of chemistry. But again, you have to be connected as one 11-man unit on the field, and again, without some of that practice time, that hurts, especially rookies when they don't really know what to expect coming into the league. People can tell you, but until you go through it for yourself, you really don't know. And then, like you said, with no off-season program, you can't work through your mistakes, kind of work through the playbook, learn things, and we'll see how much that impacts them come regular season time. Again, assuming we're able to have the season. So rookies definitely caught the L, big time, and also. Obviously, like I said, coupled with that would be rookie head coaches, because now they're in a new place with a new team of players that don't know them, don't have the same level of respect for them necessarily as they might have had in their last stop. And they got to kind of figure out a way to hold everybody together. And like I said, they're brand new to this head coaching thing, so they don't even. Matt Rule was a head coach at Baylor and at Temple, but that's not being a head coach in the pros is a different level. A lot of people have had college success, and that doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL because, again, you're interacting with that now instead of interacting with kids who you have a couple years to grow with. You're interacting with grown men who maybe who many of whom will have spent more time in the NFL than you have. So you gotta, like I said, you gotta earn their respect to a degree. And yes, then like I said, you got to build that. You're not able the leadership. You're not able to focus on the guys. You're not able to teach the guys as well. You're not able to be on the guys as much due to the fact they're not all in the building with you. They're all you're talking with them on Zoom or Skype or Microsoft Teams or whatever. So, like I said, due to this whole pandemic, that creates, like I said, an offseason that no one has ever gone through. And if you're going through it as a rookie, whether as a player or a coach, could definitely create some challenges that no one could have expected. And it will be interesting to see how that plays out during the season. Do
can you expect would you expect less from the rookies now because they don't have a real offseason to try to get to know and unlearn and understand the playbook and be ready to adjust to NFL life? Will you be surprised if teams with rookie head coaches struggle due to the fact that they don't know exactly what to expect? Will you be surprised they start off hot and then struggle because again, just because you have a couple games in the end of the season, you don't know how to sustain that. You don't know how to work your players from week to week and know how they respond to different things and don't respond to other things. Like I said, with training camp, you can kind of have that time to get to understand your players. Like, all right, when we practice like this, we need to do this the next day, or we do that, we need to do that the next day, stuff like that. You don't have time to see how that works due to the fact that you're not together. Again, people are training, people doing things, but scenario that none of them could have expected. Well, don't want to say that because we knew the coronavirus existed by the time, obviously, the NFL season ended, but it wasn't a big deal here in the States, and obviously now it is. So now you're thrust into an off-season unlike any we've ever seen. So, stinks to be them. Aaron Rodgers, self-explanatory. We discussed it with the draft. They drafted his replacement. Didn't really help him do much on the outside at the receiver position. Drafted an extra running back for who knows what reason. And then, like I said, and there are already whispers about how well their relationship between him and Matt LaFleur was last year. And again, I don't know if drafting his heir apparent, while he still thinks he can be good and can play into his 40s, is the right move. And then also, again, not getting him, whether it's in free agency or the draft or whoever, getting him any sort of help on the outside to pair with Devontae Adams. Because, again, obviously, those worked for the Saints with just really having Michael Thomas and no one else of note, you should say. That doesn't mean it's going to work for the Packers. So, and like I said, Aaron Rodgers, we discussed that one enough. A lot of people discussed that one enough, so that's kind of self-explanatory. Another one would be Dwayne Haskins. And not to say that he's necessarily going to be out of his job, because they haven't really signed anybody. I think they trade for Kyle Allen, so I'm like, all right. I guess potentially you could take his job, but there's no guarantee of that. But just for him, he's coming to an offseason with a new head coach that didn't draft him, which is obviously a big point because again, you don't have that same trust or that same relationship or the same guy in your corner. Because obviously you were a quarterback that's drafted, and obviously there was no speculation about how much the coaching staff wanted him more than the front office. A little rift there. But I'm saying when you have some of the front office, even some of the front office guys, I think are different. I think they let go of their GM, if I remember correctly. So yeah, you don't have the guys that are around. Let me actually double check on that. No, it doesn't say. But yeah, so you don't have your coach that drafted you. That was here last year. So you got to go through a new head coach. You have no offseason really, or no normal offseason program. Obviously, at least they didn't take a quarterback the second overall pick, so they helped out the defense, which again should help out the offense in theory. But the receiving core wasn't that good outside of Terry McLaurin last year. It wasn't bad. I know Sims was a decent guy last year for them I think it was undrafted as a rookie. But the only notable free agents they signed were Cody Latimer and Richard Rodgers, both like kind of journeyman type players. None of them really like big stars or like big helpful guys, at least in the past couple of years for their respective teams. Then the draft, obviously they did get Antonio Gibson, the kind of hybrid running back, slot receiver kind of thing, and then Antonio Gandy-Golden. But both the guys will be rookies. He won't be able to develop that chemistry with them. And obviously, like we talked about in the first part of the segment, where rookies are having to go through an offseason unlike any other, so who knows how their transition will be, and if it will be the same, will it be slower, will it be faster, like who knows? And like I said, there's no really way to tell until the season starts, so you kind of got the short end of the stick there with that one. And then also, they traded away Trent Williams, his left tackle, arguably one of the best left tackles in the game. And the replacement, I don't know who the replacement is, but he's obviously not going to be Trent Williams. And again, they didn't have him last year, so he kind of got that experience last year anyway. But in my opinion, if I'm the franchise quarterback, I want the best possible line I can get. And obviously, the best possible line includes Trent Williams, but now he's not on the team. So, got to figure that out. So, again, Haskins is not a big loser, but just definitely one of the losers. Cam and Clowney, two bigger losers, because obviously Clowney was able to get traded with the sign the franchise tag last year, got traded in hopes that he'd have a big year and then get big money. Didn't really have the big year, still hoping for the big money, but again, we're now into May, still not signed. Free agency was in March. And it doesn't really sound like it's going to happen. Like, there's no real talks of anything happening, because, I mean, hey, there's no real offseason, so you really know, in my opinion, there's no rush to get him in the building, get him in your program, and get him up to speed with things. Everyone's at home. So as long as he's working out, you're all right. So I'm saying, who knows how long this is going to go on for. And then, obviously, again, he kind of misplayed the market, in my opinion. Now he's going to have to settle for less, and potentially, unless, like, Ngakoue gets traded and gets a big deal, now he can kind of have a number to work off of, because the free agent market didn't play out the way he wanted. Now he's going to have to maybe take a little bit less money than he thought he was going to have to take at the beginning of free agency, and the same thing with Cam. I mean, it's unfortunate to see how far Cam has fallen. I mean, when Andy Dalton can get signed before you, I don't know what that says about the people making the decisions. Because where did Andy Dalton? We went to Cowboys. That's what it was. I forgot for a second. But yeah, so when a guy who's a former MVP, former number one overall pick, not that that should matter. Like I said, been league MVP, went to a Super Bowl. I understand he's been injured the past couple of years, but is supposed to be healthy now. But he's still just going to go unsigned just because, like we talked about, there are teams who right now could use him as their starter and be better off than they are currently with their current starter. Now, some of those teams have young quarterbacks, so like it is what it is. Some of those teams may not be trying to be as good as you think next year. So they're saying like you can't tell me the Pats can use him over Jarrett Stidham. I mean, you could argue he may be definitely at his peak he's better than Goff, but you'd argue that. You could argue he's better than Phillip Rivers and Jacoby Brissett. You could argue he's better than, especially if Tua's probably not going to play this year, you could argue he's better than Fitzpatrick. There's not really much. You argue he's better than Derek Carr. Like I said, there's quite a few teams out there. You could argue he's better than Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. And then there's quite a few spots that if they had a healthy Cam Newton would be better off than what the quarterback they have now. But for whatever reason, he's not going to get signed. At least not yet. We'll see if that changes. But as of right now, he's not signed. So it's unfortunate for him to see how far he's fallen. Because, again, he's still a guy that I think could be useful in this league as long as he's healthy. And if he is, and he claims to be healthy, then I don't know why people would be so afraid to sign him. But, again, I guess it's one of those things where he got released so late that a lot of teams had already kind of done their quarterback shuffling. And now they're kind of just stuck. So it is quite unfortunate. But that happened to Cam. And then obviously the last loser is Mitch. I mean, what happened to him is not necessarily his fault. I don't know how or why you scout him in the same conference with Deshaun Watson and pick Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's a Ryan Pace mistake. And obviously, I mean, no one really knew Mahomes was going to be this good. At least Deshaun Watson had the college career and stats and big influences to back it up. That he was going to be good in the NFL. But Mahomes was a little bit more of a wild card. Maybe if he doesn't go to the Chiefs, he doesn't have the same level of success that he's had so far. But, I mean, clearly both of them have been more successful than Mitch Trubisky. He turned down a fifth-year option. And, I mean, he's kind of stuck out there because, I mean, he really probably wasn't worthy of a second overall pick. But, again, when you have a second overall pick, you have a second overall... When you are a second overall pick, I should say, you have those kind of expectations placed on you. And he wasn't... It's going to be tough for him to live up to those expectations because it's just like, that's just not... He's not that skilled yet. Not this... Who knows, maybe bringing Nick Foles will change that, but... And they brought in Nick Foles, the writing basically on the wall for him to be replaced, whether it's at the beginning of the season or at some point during the year. But like he only has 1 year left on his deal. Like I said, you don't trade Nick Foles and restructure his deal if you don't expect him to win the starting job for you. And also, as noted by ESPN, failing to get the fifth-year option is a bad sign. 8 other first-round quarterbacks have had their fifth-year option decline. None of them have made it to a fifth year with the team that drafted them. 6 of them, Jake Locker, E.J. Manuel, Christian Ponder, Brandon Whedon, Johnny Manziel, and Paxton Lynch, didn't take a snap in the NFL anywhere in year 5. Teddy Bridgewater obviously spent some time behind Drew Brees and Blaine Gabbert. played some meaningful meaningful snaps with San Francisco, but I think that was mainly because they benched Colin Kaepernick. Because that was the Chip Kelly year. I don't know. That was weird. But yeah. So, I mean, hopefully it can be a Kyle Fuller situation. Because I know the Bears declined his offer, his fifth-year option because of injuries and stuff. And then obviously he had a great year. He got the transition tag and got a big deal. But, like I said, they didn't bring in somebody to replace Kyle Fuller. They brought in somebody, in my opinion, to replace Mitch Trubisky. Just because they've realized that they messed up. Because, again, when you have two guys in your own draft class that are... Well, one's the best quarterback in the league, like I mentioned. And Deshaun Watson's anywhere from 5 to 10, depending on who you ask. The best quarterbacks in the league. Maybe even 4, depending on, again, who you ask. So, yeah, like you have a top 10 guy in the league in your own class, then you have another guy who's the best, and then you have Mitch Trubisky. I mean, more questions should be asked about Ryan Pace than they should be about Mitch Trubisky, but also if I'm Matt Nagy and I'm kind of on the hot seat this year because of what happened last year, I don't know if I'm going to hitch my wagon to Mitch Trubisky based on what I've seen over 2 out of 3 years of his career, maybe the 2018 year just aberration. I don't know, I mean, granted, you're dealing with Nick Foles, whose career is like filled with aberrations all over it. So I don't know if that's necessarily the guy I would hitch my wagon to at the same time. But again, he's more reliable than Mitch. I've seen him perform well in the big moments. But again, he's never really had any success anywhere outside of Philadelphia. So that's definitely a little iffy to me. And again, he was hurt last year, so that is what it is. But even when he got back, basically everyone in Jacksonville wanted Gardner Minshew to start from the offset, mainly because the team was bad. But still, you very rarely do sign a guy and then for big money and then trade him after his first season. But that's what happened with Nick Foles. So again, the Bears scoreboard situation is a mess as a whole. But again, it definitely looks bad for Mitch because they brought a guy, it seems like, to replace him. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be on the Bears next year, barring some sort of excellent play from him, which again is possible, but not exactly something I would bank on. So yeah, that'll do it for the winners and losers. Like I said, there's other people you could throw in on both the winners and the loser side. Those are just some of the guys I want to discuss. And speaking of discussions, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about sports debates. And obviously that's what we do as sports fans. We love to debate different topics, different rankings, different things. But there are a lot of debates that I feel like are growing tired, and the debate style is growing tired. And I'll discuss like those debates and like what I mean and why I feel like they've grown so tired right after this break. So stay right there.
Are you looking to get your college football fixed? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Once again on the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Podcast Network. So, like I said, sports debating. Again, as sports fans, as sports junkies, as sports aficionados, whatever adjective or noun you want to use to describe yourself and your love of sports. Again, a lot of our conversations are what you would call debates. You discuss things, you discuss the way you feel about certain things, discuss the way you feel about certain players, certain teams, certain acquisitions, certain rankings, different things. And like I said, just like you normally, a lot of sports is debating. You
try to convince people the person on your team's better than this person. Try to convince somebody that this team's better than that team. I mean, that's a lot of what the sports media landscape is built on, is debating. But I feel like the way in which sports have been debated in the debate style, and also debate topics, I should say, have been hijacked and become a bit redundant. So, I mean, I don't know exactly when the switch was, but I feel like it was right around the Tim Tebow time. And Skip and Stephen A. I don't know if that was when it switched over to First Take officially, or that was still in the. I think it was officially First Take. Like, I know the show used to be like Cold Pizza or something. I wasn't really watching it then, but at that time or that era, if you will, of sports debating, kind of introduced the clutch gene and like sensationalism in sports debating. In my opinion, just like it kind of hampered the way we debate and discuss sports and the athletes involved. Like, instead of, like I said, focusing on the overall, you're focused. I mean, granted, you're not the only person, but now you're solely focused on like winning. Like, instead of focusing on the process, you're focused solely on the result. So it's like, did you win the game or did you lose the game? And that's again kind of that same kind of debate style is what led to, led to players like LeBron leaving the Heat, going to the Heat, and KD leaving the Thunder. It's because of the way in which sports is debated. Because again, instead of just being like, oh, this is a great player. Like, I mean, back in the day, not that they didn't do it, but more guys stuck with their teams because they're like, all right, we're a good player. I'm a good player. We have good teammates around us. Let's try to win it. And did it work out? Not always. And none of it, especially the Nines, had to do with running into the Bulls and Jimmy and A. You couldn't really avoid. But again, that's the end of the day. Just like, again, he was kind of another proponent. He was really one of the first early anti-LeBron guys, and again, a lot of that came up due to the 2011 finals, which is like fair. But because of that, everything just became on like this clutch gene, this like, does he have the will to win, and like, did he win at the end? Even though, like I said, Tebow in many of his games during his one magical playoff season was bad, leading up to the fourth quarter, even into the fourth quarter. But like from like towards the end, to somehow he would figure things out. All of a sudden, now his passes are accurate. Now all of a sudden he's breaking tackles and he's running through people, and he like had a bunch of like late game comebacks and wins during that time. And then they got the people's ideas like, oh, like as long as you win the game, it doesn't really matter what happens. And then again, they kind of transferred over to other aspects with the whole rings thing and stuff, and the way it's like being debated. Just like, oh, if you don't, I mean, and there's like, oh, if you don't win a ring, now you're deemed less of a player or whatever. Like, again, that's why, as we've been hearing, like guys like Draymond can talk crazy to Chuck just because, again, oh, Chuck never won anything. Like, he doesn't know as much about basketball as I does. And I mean, like, again, some of Chuck's opinions are a little out there, but that doesn't mean that like he isn't allowed to debate you. Like, he was one of the top, what I get at worst, like top 30 players of all time, in my opinion. I would think. I mean, I'd have to go back and think about it, but and actually we will discuss that in a second because NBA put out a little list of the top 74 players of all time. List is terrible. Like I said, we'll get to that. But yeah, like he's at worst like a top 30, maybe pushing it top 40 player of all time. He went over. And there's a lot of players that aren't going to win a championship that are going to be great players. Like I said, even if obviously KD's solidified more so because he won the championships, whether you have an asterisk next to them or not. But he had won multiple scoring championships. He had won an MVP before he won a title. He was solidified. I mean, what's his name? LeBron. Not LeBron. But yeah, I guess you could say LeBron. But like MJ was considered the best player in the league before he ever won a title. Like, he didn't need that to help solidify his legacy. But it wasn't like people knew he was the best player in the league before he didn't need that to prove that. But like I said, debates now have just turned all into sensationalism and all just being like point, like you just like pick and choose what you want, and it's like all kind of weird. And then like I'm saying, even with that, like the debates are just like become so redundant. Like every week with the whole, and we knew it was going to happen once the Last Dance doc came out, but it was like every week we got to go MJ versus LeBron, and I'm just like, how is no one tired of that? Because at the end of the day, with two sides and two players as polarizing, I mean not necessarily polarizing, but as good as these players are, whatever side you're on, your opinion's not going to change at this point. LeBron would have to win like 3 more championships, which he's still playing, so not impossible. But you have to win at least 3 more to even be considered. And then even then, he instead of being 3-6, now he's 6-6, where where MJ was 6-0. And again, I don't really knock people. And that was another thing, the way we were debating. Like now, you get knocked again. You're knocked for losing. So like LeBron getting to 9 championships and losing 6 of them is worse than if he only got to 3 and was 3-0. Same number of championships, same everything, but if he lost more in the first or the second or in the conference finals, then at least his final record would be good, and then now people would view him completely differently. And again, he's had some shaky performances in the finals, obviously 2011 being the worst, but 2007 against the Spurs, his team was outmatched. 2015, he didn't have Kyrie or K-Love. 2017, the Warriors are just a better team. They got KD, not much you could do there. In 2018, they traded Kyrie, and I think Kevin Love was hurt again. I mean, his best player was literally, he literally just had like J.R. Smith, and you saw what happened with J.R. Smith in Game 1. I'm saying it would have just been better for him to lose to the Raptors or the Celtics or whoever in the conference finals instead, and then now, at least his finals record is perfect. But at least now, like I said, at least now his finals record is perfect, but again, he has the same number of championships. Like, is it really that much different? In my opinion, but again, because of the way we debate sports now, the end result is all that matters. Even if he was great in those finals, and if he did everything right, because he lost, now he's a loser. He has a loser mentality. He doesn't have that Jordan it factor. He doesn't have it. And I'm just like, why? When did it become about things outside of the basketball or outside the sport? Like, why are we debating things and nothing to do with that? Like, when did this clutch gene or like this whatever gene where it's like, oh, like because he like instead of taking every last second shot, and again with Jordan, we only really highlight the ones where he made them. It's not like he never missed a last second shot. It happened. I mean, he missed a free throw in one of the Last Dance games they were Last Dance episodes they were showing. He missed like a free throw in a playoff series to lose a game. It happens. No one's perfect. But I said, but because instead of taking every last second shot, which he still does, he passes it to a guy that's open, and the guy misses a shot, or maybe he makes it, but sometimes he misses it, and now it's like, oh my God, why is LeBron afraid to take the last shot? It's like, it's all foolishness. And I said, and my other point with that was that it's just like it gets tired, like with Jordan and LeBron, whatever side you're on at this point, you're on that side. I mean, and even like people in the middle, kind of like myself, like I think Jordan's the greatest, but like LeBron's like more talented, but that's like 2 separate arguments. Like I said, but I'm not like firmly a Jordan guy or firmly a LeBron guy. If you're either of those 2 things, nothing I say to you can switch your opinion. So why are we wasting our time? And also, like, when did sports media, like all the sports debates, just become we're going to debate the same or similar topics, remixed, if you will? Now instead of being Jordan versus LeBron, it's like, oh, what can Jordan do to pass LeBron? Or what can LeBron do to pass Jordan? Or can LeBron ever pass Jordan? Or like you bring people on and ask them like who's better. It's like who at this point who cares? Because your opinion probably isn't going to change unless LeBron does something dramatic. So it's like it's pointless to me. And then also I kind of started thinking about this because there was, I think it was Dan Orlovsky was talking. I mean, not that this is the first time it's ever happened, but Dan Orlovsky was on Get Up, ranking his top 5 quarterbacks. Had Tom Brady at 4. That's a completely separate point and should have been argued more. But he put Carson Wentz at 5. Understandable, because I get it. Because I mean, granted, I'm an Eagles fan, so maybe you can call me biased, but I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I don't know if I'd necessarily rate him 5 because Drew Brees wasn't in the top 5, and I don't think he's better than Drew Brees just yet. Then Dominique Foxworth, and he had a number of quarterbacks he could have picked. Like I said, Drew Brees, Deshaun Watson, Stafford was really good last year, a couple others, and he picked Dak. And again, not to say that Dak isn't a candidate for that number 5 pick, but then just turned into a Dak versus Wentz debate. And I'm just like, why do we keep doing this? Why can't we just let 2 guys be great? And like I said, same thing with Jordan. Happens with the same thing with, like I said, happening with Dak and Wentz all the time. It's just that, like, why do we feel the need to debate the same topics over and over and over? I'm saying if you look on any 90% of sports debate shows, you got to mention at least LeBron once. You have a LeBron topic once the episode. Have a Cowboys topic once an episode. If it's not specifically just Cowboys, it's Dak versus Wentz once an episode. It's just like, why do we feel the need to debate the same things over and over again? Again, similar thing with that. Unless you're like if you're a Philly fan, you're always going to pick Dak. Wentz. Ooh, excuse me. Didn't mean to say that. If you're a Cowboys fan, you're always going to pick Dak, more or less. I mean, some people have differing opinions, but like if you're not affiliated with either of them, you're going to be in the middle. You think both guys are good. Some people are going to go one way, some people are going to go the other way. But if you're on either end, nothing I say to you, or no stats I throw at you, or no evidence, or nothing, will be able to convince you to come over to my side. And that's what debates are supposed to be. It's supposed to be discussion, and then it's just like, all right, you have points, I have points, and we kind of see, like, in fairness, you could very well feel the same way at the end of it, but like at least you kind of see where I'm coming from. With these debates, there's no seeing where anybody's coming from because no one really cares that much. They're just like, all right, I have my point, I'm sticking to it at the end of the day, and it doesn't really matter. And I'm just like, that's not how sports debate should be. It should be a healthy conversation, a healthy discussion. That's what debates are, in my opinion. They're discussions. Where you have an opinion, I have an opinion, we discuss our opinion, and then coming out of it, we may have different opinions, or we may have the same opinion. It's fine. But with these debates, it's just like you're talking to brick walls on both sides. Or nothing you say to the Jordan people is going to get them to change on Jordan. Nothing you say to the LeBron people is going to get them to change on LeBron. Nothing you say on the Dak people is going to get them to change on Dak. Nothing you say on Wentz is going to get them to change on Wentz. And obviously there's more debates you could talk about here. But I'm just saying, it's like the way in which we debate sports now is so much different than how I think it should be. Like I said, it shouldn't just be all sensationalized. It shouldn't just be picking out one stat and using that for everything. With Skip, because QBR was a big thing for Tebow. He's like, QBR is his favorite stat, even though ESPN literally just made it up like within the last 10 years. It wasn't a stat before. Now it's like, oh, we had this new ranking or rating to determine like how well you played throughout the game, and I'm just like, and now that's like the go-to for everybody. Because this is so great, but I'm like, we were judging quarterbacks without this for 40 plus years in the modern era of not even the modern era, but it's like the Super Bowl era. And now all of a sudden we throw in this new stat. Now it's the be all end all of stats, and I'm just like, and then you got two. I get in a whole separate debate on the analytics versus like all the extra advanced stats that they have that are like way too much and that people are too beholden to. But like I said, I just wish sports debates would go back to their true essence, in which, like I said, it's a discussion between two people that have a different opinion, and you try to get somebody to convince somebody that your opinion is more correct than theirs, without, like, again, making fun of them, without belittling them, without berating them, without insulting them. But that's not the way sports debates are anymore. And it's a shame. I don't know when it changed. I don't know why it changed. But that is what it is at this point. And also, like I said, stop debating the same things. How are people not tired of debating MJ versus LeBron? It's pointless. How are people not tired of debating Dak versus Wentz? It's pointless. Like, just let them both be great in their own right. And, hey, look, at least with Dak and Wentz, they play each other twice a year. You can have a debate there. See who wins the games. With Jordan and LeBron, they're never going to play each other. They're not going to be in the same eras. They're never going to be on the same court at the same time. Like, it's a pointless debate. If you think it's Jordan, you're going to think it's Jordan now. You're going to think it's Jordan in 5 years, 10 years, whoever. If you think it's LeBron, you're going to think it's LeBron now. You're going to think it's LeBron next year, the year after that, 5 years, 20 years after he's retired, you're going to think he was better than Jordan. And I'm just like, just debate something else, people. Please, can we find new debates? Can we find new topics to discuss so we don't have to see the same things on all the new TV shows and hear the same things or see the same topics discussed on the Twitter timeline every day? It gets tiresome, and I'm tired. And I mean, I'm just tired of debating the same topics. I just want new stuff to talk about. And again, obviously, there's no live sports, so that hurts. Like, we don't need to rehash the same topics day after day after day after day. Like, I don't understand how people don't get tired of discussing the same two players all the time. It's too much for me. It's too much. After a certain time, I'm like, all right, I'm through. Like, I'm good. Like, we can talk about something else. I don't even care that much. And hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. You guys understand what my point is. But just like I said, stop with the LeBron debates and LeBron NBA. Stop with the Dak Wentz. Everybody's good. Let them both be good. It doesn't really matter who's better at the end of the day. It really doesn't. Again, I understand why you want to debate things, because that's what we do as sports fans. We debate. But, we can debate other things where it's more healthy. And, like I said, and not as sensationalized. But, hey, it is what it is. So, lastly, like I talked about earlier in the segment, we're going to touch on that NBA ranking that came out, or that top, like I said, they're doing the top 74 players. They got up to 12 or 11, I think, today. And there's issues I have throughout the whole list, but especially in this most recent number, I think it was 11 to 46, or somewhere in the 40s, that just got released today. So we're going to discuss that, today being Tuesday, obviously. So we'll discuss that right after this break. Stay right there.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC, Invicta FC, Bellator, and One Championship. We got the fights covered. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
GSMC Podcast Network. So, this list. So, like I said, there's many issues that I could have with it. But, for starters, and I mean, this is probably the one of, if not the most egregious one. And that, hold on, let me just, before I say that, let me just make sure there's not anything much more glaring. Well, yes, there actually is something much more glaring. So, they have Steph ahead of KD. Now, is that the worst thing? Maybe, maybe not. But, I mean, I understand Steph's the greatest shooter of all time. Get that. That's probably why he's rated a little bit higher. At the same time, and again, he does have multiple MVPs, including the first unanimous. But, do they win either of their last two championships without KD on the team? Answer me that. Because and I feel like very many people would argue, no. If KD is not on the team, they just bring back Harrison Barnes and run the squad back. They definitely beat them as easily, but I don't think they beat the Cavs. Well, maybe 2018, because that team was not that good. But 2017, I think they lose back-to-back championships, especially if Kyrie and Kevin Love are healthy. Because, again, the biggest thing in that series was that one team had Kevin Durant and one team did not. That was really the biggest... That was really the biggest factor in that one, which is the fact that one team had him and one team did not. And like I said, he was never going to be on the Cavs, but if he was on the Cavs, obviously they just have Harrison Barnes. He didn't need to be on there. If he's on any other team, he's on the Celtics, which he was reportedly going to, or maybe he stays with the Thunder or whoever. And the Warriors play the Cavs again, they lose. So again, as great as Steph is, KD's won multiple scoring titles, won MVP at 7 feet tall, is like a walking 50-40-90 if he wants it. And again, I understand like why his championships are viewed a little bit less than the Curry's won without him. But again, Curry gets credit for 3 championships, which I get. But at the same time, 2 of them were because of KD. Point blank. Period. You can call him the leader, whatever. The best player in both of those finals on that team, though obviously not that Steph was bad, was KD. So having him ahead of him based on, I get he has 2 MVPs, but like before Durant left OKC, he had 4 scoring titles and MVP. And like I said, it's nearly 7 feet tall. He averages 27 and 7 with 4 assists for his career. Now, and I think if he wins one with Brooklyn, he's undisputed top 10 and nothing you could argue. But I mean, I would say, obviously, is he as accomplished as Larry Bird? Maybe not. But I would say he's better than Larry Bird. I mean, he's the second best small forward, in my opinion, all the time, behind, like, obviously LeBron. There's no one better, in my opinion. Again, Larry Bird's great. He'd be the only other guy in competition, in my opinion. Obviously, you got like the Elgin. I don't know. Elgin Baylor was it too. So let me not say him. But there's been other great small forwards, Julius Erving. There's been other guys. But he is, like I said, KD's my guy. So the fact that Steph was rated behind him, because again, he gets credit for the 3 championships where KD doesn't get credit for the 2, which is like kind of weird because again, they don't win it without him. Was a little bit egregious in my opinion. But I mean, the one of the worst ones was Giannis at 27. Who, like, what? Like, what has Giannis done? I understand he won MVP. That's great. He's made it. Well, it'll probably happen this year. But he's made it out of the first round of the playoffs one time, and that was last year. And they blew a 2-0 lead. Well, last season, I should say. And they blew a 2-0 lead to the Raptors with home court, if I remember correctly. I believe they had home court. I know they lost in 6, but they lost 4 straight games. And that's the best season Giannis has ever had. How is he the 27th best player all time right now? And again, I understand that he's had a great ascent. He was kind of relatively unknown when he first came to the league, and obviously he's become a great player. He potentially could win a second MVP, which would be great. And he's only like 25 years old. But I'm saying at 25, like, to have him as the 27th best player all time, ahead of guys like, I mean, that's because it's weird. Because he's going to be better than these guys in 3, but as of right now, he's not better than John Stockton, not better than AI, not better than Isaiah Thomas, not better than Steve Nash. You could argue he's not better than Harden or Russ. Some guys that are behind him as well. Oh wait, no. Where is Russ? Or was Russ in the last match? Oh Lord, he wasn't even. I forgot about that. But yeah, so it's like, what has Giannis done to warrant being a top 30 player all time at this moment? Again, is he going to be? Probably. But at this moment right now, there's no way you can tell me that he's a top 30 player all time based on what he's accomplished in the league. Like, you can't. Also, okay, speaking of Russ, he didn't even make it in the top 40, which is absurd. But he's behind Bob Cousy. For what? Just because Bob Cousy won all those championships when sports were played in black and white, and he was on a team that one of the 8 teams in the league. Have you seen Bob Cousy highlights? I've seen Bob Cousy highlights. He dribbles all with his right hand. You don't even drop Kyrie Irving. Drop Terry Rozier in the 1960s and 50s, and he's the best player in the league by far. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, alright, so I'm reading the thing. Alright, like, he led the NBA in assists. Cool. There was like 8 teams. He only averaged 7.5 assists for his career. I mean, Russ had 3 straight triple doubles. Okay, won MVP. That's great. All-star all the time. He won 6 championships. Russ hasn't done that. But again, how can you tell me that Russ is a worse player than Bob Cousy all time? You can't. Like, that's absurd. Anthony Davis, again, being top 50. Kind of wild. Just because while he's a great player, what has he done in his career outside of like sweep the Blazers at one time? Obviously, he's going to have a chance to show off this season, but it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know how Anthony Davis can be a top 50 player, a top 50 talent. But like when you rank like the best players of all time, like how can you rank Anthony Davis in the top 50 at this moment, especially at 45, ahead of guys like George Gervin, Dominique, Bill Walton. And again, he has career cut short. James Worthy, Paul Pierce. How is Vince Carter 50? How is Vince Carter ahead of Ray Allen? Ray Allen was the best shooter of all time before Steph Curry came. Average less points, average less assists per game, average less threes per game. Obviously, he has a great career, great and long and illustrious career. But I mean, he's the top 50. He's ahead of Ray Allen because of a dunk contest. Ray Allen's won multiple championships, had arguably the biggest shot of all time in the 3 in Game 6 against the Spurs, and he was the last sign to score 50 points. I mean, he was a great scorer with the Bucks, great scorer with the Sonics, very useful in Boston, and very useful in Miami. Vince Carter's done none of those things. That's absurd. Vince Carter's ahead of Clyde, really, too? Like, okay. Like I said, I understand people like Vince Carter, but, I mean, 55 is a little wild. And not even, I mean, I believe someone was saying that before when they did this list, Chris Paul's at, like, 29, and now he's at 40. And I'm like, none of the guys, like, most of the guys ahead of him are, like, older players. So, like, what has he done recently to change that? Let's see what else. Isaiah Thomas being behind Steve Nash and Allen Iverson. Kind of nuts. And I love Allen Iverson. Like I said, he's one of my favorite players of all time in sports, not just in basketball. But, like, and granted, he's a great scorer. But, like, Isaiah Thomas showed you that you didn't need a big guy to win, a great big guy. Because before then, all the teams that won had, like, great bigger guys. I mean, he won with, like, what, Bill Laimbeer and, like, Rick Mahorn. Again, not that they were bad NBA players, but they weren't. They're not Kevin McHale. They're not Kareem. They're not Bill Russell. Like, they're not that type of player that is the kind of guy that you needed beforehand to win. Like I said, you very rarely had anybody won with the guard being the lead guy, and Isaiah Thomas was the guy that showed that. And again, he's gotten slighted for a lot of stuff in his career. But yeah, like, again, he won 2 championships, won a Finals MVP, All-Star Game MVP, averaged 19 and almost 10, but 19 and 9 for his career. And you got Steve Nash as, like, the back-to-back MVPs, but, like, yikes, you could argue he shouldn't have been, like, at least one of those should have gone, like, Shaq or somebody, or maybe the first one I think should have gone to Shaq, or, like, one of them could have gone to, like, his MVPs could have gone to other people, if you really wanted to argue it. Obviously, again, he had this ushered in the South and Central West era that now, and the small ball kind of thing that D'Antoni was trying to run, that's obviously been perfected now with the Rockets. But, I mean, even having him ahead of Isaiah Thomas is kind of nuts. And I'm saying he was great from 3, but, like, that's nuts. But, yeah, I mean, like, how is Giannis one spot behind D. Wade, who's arguably the 3rd best 2 guard of all time? Depending on who you ask. Arguably. Well, I'll take that back, because Elgin Baylor's a 2 guard, and he doesn't get the kind of love he should. But it's at least an argument. And like I said, this list, all kinds of shaky, in my opinion. All kinds of shaky. And I didn't even go through all the picks. Hakeem not being in the top 10, kind of nuts. I mean, first off, his nickname, top 5, easy to Dream. Dream Shake. How many people have moves named after them? I mean, that has to at least give him bonus points. He won a Finals MVP, averaging 31 and 10. Oh, he's a 2-time Finals MVP that averaged 31 points, almost 11 rebounds, 4.4 assists, 3 blocks, and a steal and a half during the playoffs with the Rockets' back-to-back title runs. One of the dominant anchors his NBA record of blocks may never be approached, much less broken. He worked David Robinson in the playoffs, worked Shaq in the playoffs. And again, Hakeem should get more love than he does. I think you could argue top 10 for him. And I guess, I get Oxford Robinson's ahead of him, but like, I could argue Hakeem was better. So like I said, these lists are always funny because, most of them are just like to get people riled up and be like, why would you have that like that? That's what a lot of these NBA lists are. There's any list. A lot of these lists, this is like whenever it's too dull, you see like in the sports world, they're just like, let's just throw a really bad list out there. Go, and then they throw it, and you're just like, what is this? And everyone's talking about it for a day, and then like it eventually goes away because no one really cares that much. But I clearly care enough to talk about it because some of these were egregious in my opinion. But yeah, like I said, everybody has lists. I've made lists on the show. This list was bad, but again, ESPN's done other lists like this, and most of them haven't been that great. The one great soundbite was from the one list. I think they ranked NBA players heading into the season. Like they had Melo really low. I think they had him like below Blake Griffin, and like him and Max, Stephen A. and Max were going back and forth about it. And that provided for one of the many great Stephen A. memes or moments, I guess, however you want to word it, on First Take. But yeah, this list wasn't great in my opinion. But hey, if you have a different opinion, please let me know. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We can debate it. Obviously, hopefully it's a little bit better. At least it'll be something new. Won't have to be talking about LeBron or Dak and Wentz every day, which will be obviously be a great change. So you can reach out to us there, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you like what you've heard today, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Make sure you're always on top of when we drop our latest stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating. Our sense of view, very appreciated, very helpful, allows you to like, dislike, all that fun stuff. And I also want to give my shout out to the essential workers like I do every episode. First responders, nurses, doctors. I feel like I've missed first responders in a lot of these, so sorry for that, but shout out to you guys as well. Nurses, doctors, police officers, firefighters, grocery store people, everyone that's been deemed essential. Obviously, we are finding out that there's a lot of people important to keeping things functioning than we realize. And like I said, these people's livelihoods and jobs should not be taken for granted. And they should be treated with respect. I saw somebody there was a, this is not sports related, but there was a fight that broke out at Red Lobster between a server and a patron on Mother's Day because the patron was mad they had to wait 3 hours when A, the staff is short-staffed, and B, Mother's Day and these kind of holidays are always the biggest for takeout stuff because everybody are just busiest, just in general, whether takeout or sit down, just because no one's cooking, everyone's going out, and obviously in a situation like this where even less people are cooking and no one is, or I guess not even less people are cooking, but everyone's ordering takeout. Because, again, no one wants to cook on Mother's Day, and now they don't, and there's, like, less options of where you can go. That the 3-hour wait time wasn't that shocking, but then they got into a fight because after she got told, like, hey, you got to get out, she, like, slapped one of the patrons, and it was, like, But I'm just saying, like, these kind of workers have to deal with those things all the time. I think she at least did have a mask, so I give her that, because some of these people are threatening workers, and they don't even have masks on. I'm like, that's unnecessary. Especially when I'm like, it doesn't do anything to you to wear a mask. Just wear a mask. If they say, all right, if you got to walk into the store to get this food, wear a mask. Is it really that hard? It's not infringing on your freedoms. You're not being oppressed. None of that stuff's happening. You're doing it for the betterment of not just you, but for the workers, for the people around you. Just put a mask on. It's not that hard. They're not that big. You can you can still live your life, and then once you leave, take the mask off. Who cares? Just like for the 5-10 minutes you're in the store, whatever, picking up your food, just wear a mask. It's not that hard, people. It really isn't. Just wear a mask. If you don't want to be inside forever, just wear a mask. That's fine. That's why we haven't opened things back up, because people won't listen. There needs to be certain restrictions or regulations in place, but no one will listen to them because they feel like they're infringing on their freedoms. Because they want to willingly get sick and give sicknesses and viruses to other people. Like, what? And just wear a mask. Just wear a mask. It's not that complicated. Well, I could go on forever about that. So I'm going to stop myself now. But yes, before I get down that hole, again, I want to thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode. Our sense of view, very appreciated, very helpful, allows you to like, dislike, all that fun stuff. Also, if you could please as well, give us a 5-star rating. Our sense of view, very appreciated, very helpful, allows you to like, all that fun stuff. And I also want to thank you guys for listening. Again, I want to thank you guys for listening. that has been my time. I've been Chris Blades. And until next time, peace out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.